Today's Valentine's Day. My Valentine's sitting right over there. Come April, we'll be married 40 years. I'm getting old. She's not, I am. Oh, goodness. We're going to have to set up some more tables so we can social distance better, huh? Isn't that great, huh? That's wonderful. Yeah, you know what? If you're going to clap and you're going to give God honor, do it with gusto. Okay, let's do that. What is it that causes quarrels and fights among us? That's a question that James answers in chapter 4. But before we get to chapter 4, we need to camp out a little longer in chapter 3, verse 18. It seems to me that we are dealing with various quarrels and fights, and it's at some point in our lives we look around and we go, well, that country is battling that country, and this is happening to that country. But sometimes we look today, and some of the lack of peace is internal. It's happening within our country. And I held off for about a month to talk about it at all. And because I knew it was coming up as far as chapter 4. But I think I'm going to take the time this morning to camp out in James chapter 3, verse 18. Because if we don't understand and grasp the implications of what James says in verse 18, we're never going to take care of business in chapter 4. Are you following me so far? I remember, doesn't seem that long ago, but it was more than 20 years ago, we saw some buildings fall in New York City. And I remember a Sunday school class who had a list of service members, and they're praying over the various service members who were going to war. And I remember hearing the following week that one of the names that we prayed for that Sunday was killed in action the following, on that same day we were praying for him. And we notified everybody on the following Sunday. And I'm thinking, we've got to get a better handle on verse 18 before we go to chapter 4. Take a look at verse 18 with me, would you please? And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. Let's read that again. Look at it. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. You've seen bumper stickers says, no peace, no God, no peace. Or no Jesus, no peace, no Jesus. I want to twist that around just a little bit. Without righteousness in our lives, there cannot be peace. With no righteousness, no peace, there is no peace if there's no righteousness. Now, I understand what Paul says in the book of Romans, says there's no one righteous, not even one. We all fall short of God's glorious standard. I understand that. But what I also understand is that Jesus Christ came, died, gave up his life, buried, and rose again on the third day to make us righteous. That's right. Why aren't we living righteous lives? Because if we were living righteous lives, we'd be what? Peacemakers. You following what I'm saying here? Peace requires the right actions. In your outline, just put right actions. Peace requires a right action. Look at verse 18. And those who are peacemakers. First of all, peace is something that needs to be made. It just doesn't happen. It needs to be made. Listen, I don't know throughout history how much actual peace we really had from the beginning of time. But see, peace is something that is made. It does not exist naturally. You know how I know that? Because you look at Genesis. And when sin came into the world, the earth, as well as all living creatures and everything that God created, was cursed at that point. And it wasn't too long before Cain resented his son, his brother Abel. And we know what happened there. We have approximately 4,000, 5,000 years of written history, depending on how you want to measure it. And somebody calculated that over that period of time, at various points of history, we've had periods of peace that amounts to about 300 years out of about 4,000 to 5,000 years of history. And I submit to you there's probably less than that. I find it hard to believe if Cain killed Abel in Genesis that there has been peace ever. Now, it's just me. I gave you what the scholars had to say. But we live in a world that's aflame with passion, with anger, with violence, and we claim to be disciples and followers of Jesus. Therefore, we should be what? Peacemakers. Peacemakers. A philosopher said that every century was characterized by one special emphasis. He went on to say that the 17th century was characterized by mathematics. The 18th century was characterized by physical science. The 19th century by biology. And the 20th century by fear. Now the question is it still too early to characterize the 21st century? We've had 2 decades. What does that say about the 21st century so far? Peace is something that doesn't exist naturally, and it takes action on our part to make it. Can you imagine a farmer in the Midwest? Now, don't take the analogy too far, because if you go the wrong direction, the analogy breaks down. But can you imagine a farmer? He gets all the latest publications on farming. He sits in his armchair, his lazy boy, he opens his glossy magazines, and he looks at the latest seed, the new farming equipment that's coming out, the analysis of soil samples. But he never gets up off his lazy boy to go plant a crop. And he wonders why he doesn't have a harvest. The church, not just our church, churches that are Bible-believing, New Testament churches that believe in Jesus Christ, are baffled why they don't have multitudes coming into their worship centers, into their worship, into their home or small groups or life groups or whatever they're calling themselves today. We're too busy sitting on our lazy boys than actually going out and planting seeds for a harvest. Also, think about the time that we're living in. And I don't care about your political affiliation. So listen, our problem is not political. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care whether the right says, the left says. I don't care the Democrats, Republicans, Independents. I don't care anything about that. It's not political. It is spiritual. Amen. And the spiritual people who have the Holy Spirit living within them are fighting with one another about political ideologies when we should be sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ with others. That's right. That's how peace comes about. True wisdom is not only peace-loving, it is peacemaking. The Bible tells us in Matthew, actually Jesus, his own word says in Matthew 9, those who work to bring peace are happy. They're blessed because God will call them His children. Are you God's children? We ought to be making peace. Three ways we can take action, because that's the next question, what do I do about it? First of all, we should take action to preserve peace. We need to preserve peace. We need to preserve peace between nations. Now that's kind of hard for you and I to do, but we should urge our leaders to do that. We need to preserve peace between people. Between people. That can be hard too, when you don't know what's going on. You know what? I've told you this story about a couple who lived in Green Valley who complained that they didn't know anybody around them, and Green Valley wasn't very friendly. And I know people in Green Valley, they're very friendly. So if somebody from Green Valley is watching, it's just a broad general statement. Of course, this couple lived in a gated community. They pull out of their garage. Their own personal gate would open. They leave their gated community. They go shopping, come back. Of course, they have their windows tinted so nobody could see who's in the car. And they come back, they go through their gated community, they push a button, their gate opens, they push another button, the garage door comes up, they come into the garage door closes, then they open and take their groceries out and put them away, and they wonder why nobody and they're wondering why they don't know anybody? But you know, that's happening metaphorically all across our neighborhoods. We don't know who lives next door. You know, Gina and I happen to know who lives next door, not because we made an effort to know, it's because we've been there way too long. And some of the other residents that live close to us have been there just as long as we have or longer. And we have met people who live get a corner from us and across the street from us, but they have changed hands and they're renters and they move out and they come and so I know how difficult it is. But what are we doing to make peace? We need to make peace, to preserve peace between churches. That's why I'm real careful what I say about anybody. Unless I know firsthand myself, I try to be careful what I say and how I say it. I want to keep peace. Now listen, there's a difference between peace and appeasement. Would you agree, John? There's a huge difference between peace and appeasement. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But what about preserving the peace with one another? Can we disagree with one another without being disagreeable? See? I suppose if we were to sit there and just have a certain talk, we would disagree on certain issues. They may not be church issues, they may not be religious issues, they may be worldly issues. You may disagree about this or agree on this, or, I'm not going to bring up a subject because I'm sure I'm going to catch it as you leave the church, so I'll just keep my mouth shut. If you want to know where I stand on certain things, I'll be happy to tell you, but this is not the forum to do that right here. That's right. Preaching Jesus Christ, Him buried, crucified, buried, and rose again on the third day, that's a priority here. Ephesians 4. Always be humble and gentle. Always be humble and gentle. Listen, the word for meekness described in Scripture is power under control. When my 6-month-old granddaughter can sit in the saddle of my daughter's, on top of my daughter's horse, in the saddle of my daughter's horse, that horse is being meek. Tell you what, that horse does not like me. When it comes to me, he's certainly not meek and gentle. He's going to have his way. But with my daughter, with that bit in his mouth, everything changes. You understand the difference between meekness, power? So you need to be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourself united in the Spirit, binding yourself together with peace. Now, I know that most of you are much more perfect than I am. I get it. But you know what? I still have to make allowances for even your perfectness. I say that tongue-in-cheek, right? You understand the sarcasm there? Because we think of ourselves as not as bad as the next guy. We need to understand that God sees us, even the best of us, dressed in filthy rags. And that's why Jesus died for us. And if God had mercy and grace and patience and humility for us, don't you think we ought to show that for others? Particularly our brothers and sisters in this place. We should promote peace. Does the general flow of your life tend to promote peace? Or do you tend to be prickly, touchy, difficult to get along with? Francis of Assisi had this beautiful prayer. He said, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled or to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Not bad for a man that lived a couple thousand years ago. We should take action to pursue peace. Preserve peace, promote peace, preserve peace. The Bible uses this same word in Psalms 34:14. Depart from evil and do good, seek peace and, what's it say? Pursue it. In Romans 14:9, therefore let us pursue the things which make for peace and the things by which one may edify another. If you're reading from that's the New King James. In Hebrews 12:14, pursue peace with all people and holiness without which no one will see the Lord. See, our actions, James, if you go back, James says, you say you have faith, show me your faith by what you do. We don't do good acts, we don't do good things, we don't be peacemakers in order to get salvation. We have salvation in our life. We have righteousness in our life. Therefore, we should seek peace. We should preserve peace. We should go after it. Now, the question is that possible? The New International Version says in Romans 12:18, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you. You know, some people you just can't get along with. I don't care how hard you try. But as long, don't point at, but she just pointed at you, Bob. We just won't. And she's your Valentine. Pray for Bob. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. The New Living Translation says, do all that you can to live with peace with everyone. How are we doing with that? Now, here's the question, and this is the question that I'll probably get in trouble for because it won't go far enough or it goes too far, and I'm going to take a middle-of-the-road approach here. The question is it ever right to fight? Is it ever right to fight? And let me tell you the answer is yes. Yes. Wait a minute, we're supposed to be peacemakers. Yes, we're supposed to seek peace. We're supposed to pursue it. We're supposed to preserve it if we can. We're supposed to promote it if we can. But remember, Solomon says there's a time to love and the time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. When you study the Scriptures, you will see there are many times where God said to go to war. You can look at Hebrews 11 and find heroes of the faith: Joshua, David, Gideon, Samson. You can also see in the New Testament where Jesus wasn't a pacifist. And in John chapter 4, if you read it carefully, he saw the money changers in the temple. He came out of the temple, and the King James says he fashioned himself a whip. In other words, he didn't go out and buy one. He didn't go find one. He sat down and made one, and then went in and cleared the temple. So when is it right to fight? I think we ought to fight to preserve freedom. Amen. We were all born with inalienable rights. I may not like what you say, but I ought to be able to defend what you say to the death. But don't shut me up either. Right? God told Moses to wipe out the Midianites because they were very oppressive. Numbers chapter 31. God got angry with 2 tribes in Israel because they wouldn't go to war. Numbers 32. And you have to decide what's worth dying for. And if you don't know what's worth dying for, then you will never know what's worth living for. We ought to fight to defend the innocent. Proverbs 21:15. Justice is a joy to the godly, but it terrifies evildoers. We should want peace. We should seek after justice. But price at any price is not peace. Price at any price is appeasement. And the Bible tells us that God is a God of peace and of justice. And in James chapter 2, verse 13, he says, "For judgment is without mercy." Edmund Burke says, "All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men and women to do nothing." Someone else said, "A man who has nothing which he is willing to fight for, nothing which he cares about more than his personal safety, is a miserable creature who has no chance of being free." Defend the innocent. Here's what I believe. I believe the United States specifically, maybe the world in general, is under the hand of God's judgment because we refuse to defend the innocent. What are you talking about? When abortion is a $20 billion a year business, and the church is silent about abortion, we got a problem. Well, you know, the Supreme Court ruled. The Supreme Court can be wrong. They're not God. The Supreme Court is not ruling in a vacuum either. Times change. We had a little girl that my daughter gave birth stillborn to. You know the story. Most of you do. She thought she was pregnant. She took a test. It showed out positive, so she made an appointment with the doctor about a week or 2 later. Sure enough, she was pregnant. But there was some fluid around the baby, and just to be on the safe side, she went to go get an ultrasound done. When she got done there, and there's a little place in St. Joe's. I don't know if they've moved it, but if it's the same place, it's a terrible building. And I pray for the nurses that have to work there because they're seldom bearers of good news. 8 weeks, 10 weeks. Sadie was 10 weeks old. And they said, this baby's got a deformity, may be born with Turner syndrome. She probably won't make it to term. Would you like us to terminate it? Within a matter of just a few minutes, she went to being pregnant to asking if they wanted to terminate the baby. As far as it depends on you, make peace with people, with everyone. They're in tears, and her and her husband decided to keep the child. And on Tuesday, On Thursday, it had a heartbeat. On the following Tuesday, it did not. And she had to give birth to a 19, 20-week-old baby that was stillborn. And because of people being merciful at the hospital, some things worked out really well. But, I don't know what to do when somebody says, your child's going to have Down syndrome. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But God has the answer for that. But to terminate a child because it's a boy or a girl, to terminate it because it's inconvenient, you didn't find it inconvenient a couple nights before that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be graphic. You didn't find it inconvenient. You found it inconvenient to get up from where you're at to protect yourself. You understand what I'm trying to say? Protect the innocent. We ought to fight to stop evil. God has authorized governments to enforce laws and punish offenders. I have to tell you, I'm a defender of babies. You know what? The most dangerous spot for a baby today is in the womb of its mother. And that shouldn't be. But I have to tell you, I have difficulties at times, with the capital punishment stuff. Where do you stand on that? I'm going to tell you, I'm wishy-washy on that. Sometimes we're in haste to point a finger at somebody who may or may not be guilty. But here's the thing. Paul says the authorities are God's servants sent for your good. But if you are doing wrong, of course you should be afraid, for they have the power to punish you. They are God's servants sent for the very purpose of punishing those who do what is wrong. We live in a fallen world, and every person has sinned, and people just have a tendency to hurt one another. And governments have been authorized by God to uphold the right. Also, folks, listen. Elections have consequences. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic. You've got to go back to your what do you call it? Civics class. Thank you. Couldn't get that out, and because civics are no longer taught. And if we go with total democracy, the masses rule, and the masses could be wrong too. But sometimes God brings our leaders around to punish those of us who are not doing these other things. And in Israel, the Assyrians came down and wiped them out and carried them back. Do you think there might have been some righteous people living in the northern kingdom of Israel at the time? Yes. And guess what? They got carried along with them. In the southern kingdom of Judah, don't you think there were people in Judah, some righteous people in Judah who were God-fearing, and yet guess what? They were taken back to Babylon also. Folks, there will be righteous people that will be hurt as God's judgment comes. But folks, we need to stay strong. God protects the righteous. Well, I don't want to go through the fiery furnace like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Well, I hope you don't have to go through the fiery furnace. I hope you don't have to be in the lion's den. But those four men, was willing to give up their life to worship God Almighty. Are you? Because there's some things worth dying for. Are you willing to make peace? Because God said, make peace. And be peacemakers. The right action for peace is the what I call it, the activity of evangelism. Well, I'm not a good evangelist. You don't have to be a good evangelist. Well, I don't know all of the outlines. You got faith outlines. You got the evangelism explosion. You got the 4 spiritual laws. All kinds of tracts out there. You know what? In Paul's day, right after Jesus was resurrected, the apostles, they didn't have any tracts either. All they had was their testimony and the Word of God. And we studied Revelation, and what does Revelation say? They will know us by what? By our love, by our what? Our testimony, and love not our life even unto death. We have had it so good in our country. We really have. I can stand up here and preach and not have to worry about somebody coming in with a gun telling me I can't. Or a machete. Let's hope those days don't come. We are to be ambassadors of reconciliation. Paul tells us in his second letter to the Corinthians in chapter 5. This means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone. A new life has begun. Folks, sometimes I think we want the joy of the certainty and joy of going to heaven, but we don't want the new life that comes with it. Think about it. Yeah, I like what these people are doing over here, but you know what? Heaven is, they're going to hell, but heaven, so, okay, I'll act Jesus in my life, and then I'll act any way I want to act. You got to be careful with that, folks. Jesus can't be your salvation unless He's first Lord of your life. The old life is gone, a new life has begun. And all of this is a gift from God, who brought us back to Himself through Christ. And God has given us this task of reconciling who? Reconciling people to Him. For God was in Christ, reconciling the world to Himself, no longer counting people's sin against them, meaning He's making you righteous. And He gave us the wonderful message of, say the word, reconciliation. So we are Christ's ambassadors. God is making His appeal through us. We seek for Christ when we plead, come back to God. It is the gospel that brings peace between us and God. It is the gospel that brings peace between other people. I don't mean to embarrass anybody here. Carol is came up from Sierra Vista. And she was directed to our church, and I know some people in Sierra Vista. We don't know each other very well. We just met this morning, right? We are ambassadors of Christ. We are brothers and sisters in Christ. I don't know what she believes as far as ideology or political parties. It doesn't matter, because we are children of God. Amen. You understand what I'm saying? After 40 years of marriage, I'm almost thinking the same way as my wife. Not.
You're in dangerous territory.
Well, let me point this out. You've been longer married than me, Bob. Has she changed you one bit? A little bit. There's some influences there.
Get another 22.
You know, they asked Bess Truman. She says, "Can you get your husband to stop saying manure so frequently?" And she says, it's taken me 30 years just to say manure. Okay. Peace requires the right action, right? Peace also requires the right attitude. The right attitude. Look at what it says. We'll plant seeds of peace. What's the right attitude? We need the attitude of courtesy. We must sow the message of peace with the spirit of peace. In Proverbs 15:1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stirs up anger. Ain't that the truth? In Ecclesiastes 4:10, a quiet spirit can overcome even great mistakes. What does that tell us? We can mess up, but if we are gentle and humble about our mistakes. See, I did something last Tuesday. I went to Douglas. Did I go to Douglas last Tuesday? Last Tuesday I went to Douglas, or this Tuesday? This Tuesday I went to Douglas. Yeah, this Tuesday I went to Douglas. I did something that I haven't done in 20 years of umpiring that I never thought I'd ever do. On a half swing or a check swing, I had 3 of them. It was the 4th one that got me. Did he go? No, he didn't go. Did he swing? No, he didn't go. On the 4th one, did he go? Yes, he did! No, he did! He did! Okay? My mistake. I'm working with a former major league, minor league umpire. And all he could do was smile, and we got back, and he says, yeah, that's one of my big fears too. I just had to be humble about it and eat it. I got the call right, everything was fine, and the score didn't matter. But in a close game, that would have been a problem, right? But I just have to be humble. We make mistakes. And I was just gentle about it. I'll take my medicine. And if my assigner sees this, I'll probably be in trouble. But Paul says, since God chose you, listen to this. So much of the time we get so high and mighty about ourselves. Oh, I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. Good for you. But do you understand God chose you to do that? That's kind of hard to understand. We think we're making up our own mind. But the Holy Spirit's at work within us, convicting us of our sins, realizing where we need to be. And finally, God says, I'm choosing you. When are you going to respond? And we respond. Paul says, since God chose you to be the holy people He loves, you must clothe yourselves in tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowances for each other's fault, and forgive one another who offends. Forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you. You must forgive others. Above all, clothe yourself with love that binds us together in perfect harmony. And here's the problem: too many of us are walking around the church naked, unclothed in the things that we need to be clothed with. We have a great opportunity to be peacemakers when we've been wrong. Whenever we are offended, reviled, wronged, abused, slandered, we have special opportunities to be peacemakers. And the greater the sin committed against us, the greater the opportunity of demonstrating the power that God has as far as grace is concerned, not only in our lives, but in the life of somebody else. We need an attitude of courtesy. We need an attitude of urgency. Thomas Manton wrote, whatever we do in this life is seed. Have a care of the season. It is the seed time. Our activity is sowing. And so is our inactivity. Oh, I don't think I'll sow any seed. Listen, you are sowing seed one way or the other, whether you like it or not. You can say I'm not sowing seed, but that attitude of not sowing seed, you're sowing seed, it's not the seed you want. You understand what I'm saying? It's not the seed you want. We're all sowing seed. Just the question is, what kind of seed are you sowing? Well, I don't want to waste my seed in bad soil. So what? You know what? God's the one that makes the seed grow. You've got seed to sow. Sow it, and sow the right seed. It is seed time for young. It is seed time for the middle-aged. It's seed time for older adults. All life is about the process of sowing. And who are we to say with certainty how many more handful of seeds is left to sow? Do you see the relevance of peacemaking in the context of urgency? Is there an apology that ought to be made? Is there a letter that needs to be written? Is there a restitution that needs to be paid? Is there a hand that needs to be offered? Is there a misunderstanding that needs to be corrected? Is there a breach that needs to be healed? Is there a gift that needs to be made? How many more days are left before us to sow seed? Peace requires the right aim. Look at verse 18 again. Reap a harvest of righteousness. What is the right aim? The right aim is righteousness. Righteousness used to be spelled WRIGT-WICE-NES. Right wiseness. That's how it used to be spelled. We've changed it to righteousness. We've put it together, meaning those things that are pleasing to God. We are not called to pursue peace as an end and of itself. See, that's the problem. I don't want to. We look at peacemaking as the end. It's not. Peacemaking is the beginning of righteousness. We are not called to seek for peace at any price, and we are not to buy peace at the expense of truth. We are to avoid the sin of tolerance. Did I say that? Did that sound politically incorrect? Because it is. It is biblical. We are not to avoid the sin of intolerance. The Bible links peace and righteousness together. We dare not tear them apart. In Hebrews 12:14, pursue peace with everyone and holiness. Out of it no one will see the Lord. There's a virtuous circle you need to understand. Righteousness promotes peace, and peace promotes righteousness. Go clockwise with me. This is counterclockwise to you. Peace promotes righteousness, righteousness promotes peace. It's a vicious circle. Amazing. That's a vicious circle you want to be a part of, because it's not vicious, it's virtuous. It's a virtuous circle that you want to be a part of. And I'm out of time, so what do I say now? The greater aim is the glory of God. Isaiah 61:3, to all who mourn in Israel, He will give a crown of beauty for ashes, a joyous blessing instead of mourning, festive praise instead of despair. In their righteousness, they will be like oaks that the Lord has planted for His own glory. See, it's a matter of peace. Peace requires right action. It requires right attitude. It requires a right aim. What about your own personal peace? Why wouldn't you want to have peace with God this morning? There may be somebody here who doesn't have peace with God. You need God's righteousness in your life. Listen, there's a heaven and there's a hell. And you're destined to go one place or the other. And if you don't have righteousness in your life, you're destined to go to hell. I don't believe in hell. Well, good for you. How's that working out for you? And I'm not being facetious here. The road to heaven is not broad and straight. That's the road to destruction. Anybody can be on that road. But God is choosing you to be a child of His. He wants to bring peace into your life. He wants to make you righteous in His eyes. That can only be done with Jesus. We have a sign on the foyer that says, don't leave here without Jesus. Don't leave here this morning without the peace of Jesus in your life. Be reconciled with God this morning in Jesus' name. Would you pray with me? Father, peace seems to be an elusive thing in our life. But because of what Jesus did at Calvary, we can have peace with you. And as we grow in a righteousness because we have turned our life over to you, we then too can become peacemakers. With the right aim, the right attitude, with the right actions. Father, forgive us when we fail and forget that we are to be ambassadors of reconciliation. Father, the struggles that we're having in our country, in our political system, has nothing to do with ideologies as much as it does with spirituality. Father, let us be beacons of light in the darkness of this world. Let us be ambassadors. We're just sojourners through this land. And Father, let us be ambassadors of goodwill that brings reconciliation of Jesus to people. Father, let us understand and give us knowledge when it's right to fight and when we shouldn't. Father, you came, Jesus says He came to give us life and give it more abundantly. I thank you for forgiving my past sins. I thank you for giving me an abundant life today. And I thank you, Father, for giving me hope for tomorrow in heaven. Father, I pray that there's somebody here this morning that needs to make that decision. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. The question is to you this morning as the worship teams come forward, will you surrender your life to Jesus? Now listen, it's not an easy thing to do. I know that. And we're going to sing a song that says, I surrender all. And if you've done that, would you just lift that up as a prayer this morning and remember the joy of God's salvation in your life? But if you haven't and you want to respond, come forward. There'll be somebody to greet you. Even if I have to stop singing, I got 2 other people here to sing now. So would you stand with me? And would you commit your life to being peacemakers this morning?